Hi, I'm Sam Flying Kite, and welcome back to the horror show. This week I'm doing a double feature, and this double feature is the original and the remake. Well, the original that came out in 1933, and then Peter Jackson's remake of King Kong. I don't have a physical embodiment of the original King Kong, but I do have the remake. So that's pretty cool. I know there's that one remake in the 80s or 90s, but I didn't have that either. And I guess just to go over it real quick, the idea, the synopsis of both movies, because they're the same plot, it's just that Peter Jackson's expands the plot, is that there's a film crew led by Carl Denham, and they're going out to this island that no one's ever been to before, right? No one from the modern world has been to before. So they're going there to shoot a movie, and when they get there, they find this tribe, and they live kind of like on this tiny little peninsula of the island. But that little part of the island is cut off from the rest of the island by this big great wall, right? That no one knows who built, right? It was built a very long time ago. Anyway, they get there, and it's the film crew, some of the sailors, Carl, and the girl, because they gotta have a girl for their movie. And the tribes people, they see the girl, white girl, and they're like, ooh, she'll make a perfect sacrifice to King Kong, kind of thing. So, they're just like, nah. So they try to get out of there, but the tribes people end up kidnapping her. And before the crew is able to save her, King Kong gets her. And so then the rest of the movie is them exploring the island, trying to find her and rescue her. The original, alright, so we're gonna talk about the original first. As I said, it came out in 1933. It's an hour and 40 minutes long. It's a 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb with about 96,000 people voting. It's directed by Marion C. Cooper and apparently Ernest B. Schlotzak, although to be fair, Marion C. Cooper is the main person. I don't know how much Ernest contributed to it, but he's credited. Fay Wray plays Ann Darrow. Robert Armstrong plays Carl Denham. Ann Darrow is the main girl that they bring along to play the girl, right, in their movie. Carl Denham plays the director. Bruce Cabot plays Jack Driscoll, who's kind of like the first mate, but ends up being a love interest of Ann Darrow. And Captain Inglehorn plays Frank Riker. And I think my favorite thing about the original is kind of just the whole, like, it's really difficult. It's not like it's not bad. I do like it. I'm just trying to think of what my favorite thing is about it. There's some musical pieces that I really like in the movie. And then probably the stop motion's really good. Now, watching it, it's like, okay, if there is a nitpick, okay, on the island, there's dinosaurs, there's T-Rexes, and then there's some herbivores. But, like, there's, like, 2 dinosaurs that are herbivores, or, like, if I'm playing by the rules of modern science, there's 2 dinosaurs that are herbivores, and these dinosaurs attack the crew. So it's kind of like, um, it's kind of interesting if you're trying to explain it away. You'd be like, well, you don't really know. You just make assumptions based on like fossils and teeth and some other stuff. But like, if you're just pretending like, okay, well, if I'm trying to buy into it, you just, I don't know, be like, maybe these dinosaurs have seen people before and it didn't go out well. So that's why they're straight up attacking, right? Or maybe they were herbivores, but maybe they just got really tired of eating plants and wanted to taste man flesh. But I mean, I think it's a fun movie still, and there's a big fight scene between King Kong and a T-Rex in the original that's a bit expanded in the remake as well. But I really like how that scene turned out. And then there's some dialogue stuff that happens in the original that honestly I kind of like. Like Carl Denham when he's all right. So he hasn't told Captain Inglehorn where they're going, but when they get to a specific part, you know, of the ocean, when they're like, okay, we're closer and closer to the place, now I'm gonna tell you about it now. And you know, he goes on to be like, have you ever heard of Kong and Skull Island and all that stuff? It's like, we're going to a place that no white man has been before. It's like, whoa, this is 1933. I just didn't expect it for some reason. And this is a movie that I'm a bit nostalgic about because this is one of those movies that I would have watched when I was younger. But like the last time I watched this movie before this would have been quite some time ago. So watching it with my modern, right now mindset, it was kind of funny hearing that, and then some other stuff that was more towards the end of the movie that were like, what do you mean by that? But you know, I was gonna write down budget and box office for both movies, but I ended up forgetting to write that down. But I mean, I'm sure it did good, and King Kong ended up having a sequel called Son of Kong. Which honestly, I think I really like that sequel. From what I remember about it, although to be fair, it's a little more simpler. But anyway, it's the kind of sequel that like I really wish that was remade as well, or at least something, because I feel like how the remake ends, because the remake is a lot more expanded, that would have made like really good sense storyline wise, but they never did that. So I think the worst thing about the original King Kong is that there was a lot of things that were ended up cut from the movie. So it's like an hour and 40 minutes. It's a long movie already. Well, it's a long movie for when it came out, right? But the problem ultimately is, hey, there's a lot of things that were cut because the studios deemed it, don't know if audiences are ready for that. So for example, there's a ravine scene that would have been like, so there's a part in the movie when they're like trying to find Anne, and there's this like tree bridge of sorts, right? Fallen tree that kind of serves as a bridge, and they're using it, but then like all of a sudden King Kong comes out of nowhere, and they're, you know, fighting a bit, but then, you know, King Kong just picks up the tree and it just tosses it into the ravine. And the cut scene would have been that there's like all these insects and creatures down there, big ones, right? And whoever survived falling down there, which is still like that, falling down there is a bit of like, you're probably not surviving that, to be honest. But if there were people who did survive it, they would have had to fight off those monsters. Peter Jackson, while making the movie remake, made a short about like what it could have looked like if it was in the original, and what it looked like. It would look pretty good. So it's like, I get it. Yeah, it is a bit much, and what they already had in the movie kind of seems like on par, but I don't know. But yeah, that's like the worst thing. There's a lot of things that were cut from the movie that would have made it so much more cooler, right? Especially for my young mind, you know, the very first time watching it, I probably would have thought it was the best thing ever. And it still was pretty good. Now the remake. The remake came out in 2005. It's a 7.2 out of 10, and a little less than 500,000 people voted. So people think the original is better, but to be fair, a lot less people voted for the original. A lot less people voted on the original. The remake, of course, directed by Peter Jackson, who is known for, overall-wise, the Lord of the Rings movies, but horror-wise, noted for Bad Taste and Dead Alive. And he did Meet the Feebles, I think, and he did The Frighteners. Naomi Watts plays Anne Darrow. Jack Black plays Carl Denham. Adrian Brody plays Jack Driscoll. Thomas Kretschmann plays Captain Inglehorn. Andy Serkis plays Lumpy. And he also plays King Kong. And Kyle Chandler plays Bruce Baxter. So, the remake, as I said earlier, expands the plot. So there's more to, say, Carl Denham, and, like, he's not just going here because it's a cool idea. No one's been here before. It's more of, like, he's in a bit of a bind, and this is supposed to be his big break. Which, I mean, to be fair, that is what it is in the original, but it's not expanded, right, in the original. So in the remake, it is expanded. And there is some creative differences between the original and remake. So, for example, in the original, Jack Driscoll is this, first mate guy who ends up falling in love with Anne Darrow. But in the remake, he's a scriptwriter who falls in love with Anne Darrow. I didn't write down who First Mate is, but First Mate is not, First Mate does not fall in love with Anne Darrow. In fact, I don't even think they, like, talk much. Bruce Baxter is an actor who ends up kind of like, what they do, what Jack does, what Carl Denham does in the movie. So he's filming on the boat, and he's also filming on the island, right? But while they're on their way to the island, he's filming on the boat, and the scenes that he's filming are actually scenes that were from the original King Kong. So, like, in the original, the scene when Jack Driscoll and when Anne Darrow talk for the first time on the boat, and they're like they're like, I forget what it's called. It's not like the dock of the ship, but, like, it's like when they're overviewing the dock, and he's, ordering everyone around. And then she's like, I've never been on a ship before, kind of thing, right? It's a little silly scene. They're, like, filming that kind of scene, and Bruce Baxter plays that kind of first mate character. So that's kind of interesting. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in the remake, like how Carl Denham doesn't like Cooper, right? The director from the original King Kong. That's kind of funny. What was I? Oh yeah, and another Easter egg is, so Peter Jackson made Dead Alive, right? And Dead Alive, it's a zombie movie, and the zombies happen because there was this rat monkey from this island that's now at the zoo, and it bites this old lady, and she ends up becoming a zombie, and then it's, that's how it starts. Well, there's an Easter egg where on the ship, there's a cage, and it says, the Samaritan rat monkey, or whatever it was called, right? I forget what it was called. It might have been that, but it's like, oh, that's the thing from, that movie he made, which, you know, it starts off like on an island, kind of like Skull Island, but anyway, they make Skull Island out to be, when it comes to the superstition aspect of it, that people like have heard stories about it, like people have been there before, right? Like, oh, this is a place that the crewmates kind of don't want to go to because they've heard stories about it, right? So maybe people have been here before, but, you know, they'll go at will. I think the best thing about this movie, because this movie, I didn't write it down, but it's like 3 hours and 10 minutes, right? It's kind of doubled than the original, and everything is expanded. And I think one of my favorite things about it is they make the characters more complex. They make you hate Carl Denham more in the remake than you hate him in the original. Although I don't think you're meant to hate him in the original. There's like one moment where it's like, but in the remake, it's like he kind of becomes a douche of sorts. But I think one of my favorite things, though, about it, apart from just the complexity of the characters, is that scene that I was talking about, the ravine scene, that's actually, he makes his own version of that scene in the remake, and that scene was very, oh boy, is like 10 times what it was supposed to be in the original, right? Man, it was such a good scene. And then also probably just that, you know, Andy Serkis is in it, and he plays, you know, a human character, but then he also plays King Kong in motion capturing. Which King Kong in the remake is more of a gorilla, and then the original he's more of just like a big monkey, right? He's not like, right? But I really like. I like all the things that Peter added, right? And if I were to go and be like, which one's better? It's like, I mean, I think both of them are pretty good to their own respect. Although, to be fair, it's like I have a cousin who, at least when I would more see her than not, because when I lived up in New York, she lived up in New York, and that's like the last time I saw her, because all family has to hang out or whatever. She was really big on dinosaurs, right? So she would probably have a hard time watching the original because it wouldn't be dinosaur accurate, right? But I'm fine with it because I'm like, whatever about dinosaurs. I'm like, oh, it's a big dinosaur, kill it. It's gonna kill you. But in the remake, it's a bit more accurate about the dinosaurs and creatures that are attacking. But it's like some of the creatures are kind of whatever creatures, honest. The dinosaurs that attack, it makes sense, I guess, dinosaur-wise, right? But anyway, I think there's aspects of I think there's, honestly, I really like Peter Jackson's remake, but I kind of think I like the original better. I think I ultimately like it better. I think if there's anything in the remake I actually like better, it's probably the music. But I like the original. Because to be fair, how the characters fall down the ravine, ultimately, like, they're all dead when they hit the bottom, right? It's like, there's no way they survive it. Now, it's like, sure, someone could have, but, like, no. But, yeah, I don't think there's that much more to talk about. Oh, so, I guess the last thing is the remake was supposed to have, in 2013, there were talks about making another King Kong movie, but it would have been more of a prequel that took place around World War I. So, like, 15, 20 years before, before Peter Jackson's movie, right? Which that sounds interesting, but I would have much rather if there was like if they made a sequel that was a remake of Son of Kong, because in Son of Kong, it takes place like a month later, and Carl Denham's in a bad place because everyone's suing him because of what happened, which is like, yeah. So now he's actually very desperate to get a lot of money, and there's this guy that kind of comes up that's like, hey, there's this island. It's actually the island you were on, but there's supposed to be this treasure on it. So and if we find the treasure, we're going to be super filthy rich. So, it's him, it's Englehorn, I think, and there's like one or two more characters that you actually see in the original. And not Andero or Jack Driscoll. They're married and like probably happy ever after, and a lot of PTSD of big monkeys. So like, so they go back on the island with these other characters, and yeah, I think that was a really interesting movie. And if there was like, if Peter went back and made another movie of that, that would have been so cool. But if there ever was another movie, it would have been a remake, not remake. It would have been a prequel to his remake. But that never really picked up, and it just got to a point where like, nah, we're gonna make another King Kong movie, but it's gonna be a bit of a reboot. That's a part of the new Godzilla universe that was it Universal Monsterverse, right? Their stuff, I think so. And Kong Skull Island ended up being made, 5 years, or not, well, 5 years after they were trying to make a prequel, right? Something like that. I don't quite remember when Kong Skull Island came out. But, I mean, that was an okay movie, but, anyway. But yeah, I mean, kind of sucks. Probably wouldn't happen now. I think the closest thing you could ever get is if someone went out of their way and made another remake of King Kong, and then a remake of Son of Kong, or something like that anyway. But, I mean, it's not gonna be me, right? I'm gonna be more focusing on other stuff. That would be like something I do, like when I'm 50, 60. If I'm like, that would be fun, right? Doing that. But anyway, I'm Sam, Flying Kite. I just reviewed King Kong, the original, and then the 2005 Peter Jackson remake. This one. And, I think I like the original better. There's aspects of the remake I like better because, of course, I like a really long movie, or I like if there was an old movie and then there's a remake and it's longer, and its big thing is it expands the story. But there's some certain things about the story that I'm kind of like about, but it's more personal stuff that I'm like, I don't know if I want to talk about that stuff. But I really like the original, and I really like how kind of simple the original was. So it was interesting, comparing these two movies, but I picked the original. And there's certain things in the remake that I actually really like, but it's kind of it. But yeah, I will see y'all next Friday. And I might be reviewing In a Violent Nature. I guess you have to wait and see if I actually review that or not. It's either that or something else, but we'll find out. Anyway, I'll see y'all then. Goodbye.